Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the sixth and final course in the Digital Media Academy. I hope you found this course productive and that it helped you think through everything that you all have been working on throughout this program, and inshallah your final projects are fruitful. I wanted to dive into this final session about Ramadan just because Ramadan is really the most important time of year for Muslim content. There's no other way around it. Like if you look at the traffic numbers on websites, it can literally be up to 10x the traffic on YouTube videos. Anything that has to do with Muslims, Islamic content, it's about where 80% of ad revenue is spent in the global Muslim world for targeting Muslims for different things during the month. And so there's all these metrics that show you that it's the month where people consume content about Islam and Muslims. It's of course also the biggest giving time of year. It's the time when charities are raising money, and so it makes sense for you to develop content for this time if you're doing anything that's Muslim related. The other piece of it, of course, is that you need to have the correct intentions in this month. That's why we called this course Telling Your Story in Ramadan, to serve Allah first and foremost, right? To build your brand and to raise money for your company. But it's really important, and that's why we linked to that article about 7 tips for barakah. And that's especially true within developing any type of work for Ramadan. You want to really make your intentions clear. You want to start thinking about them really early. But if you can, it's also good to develop content during the month itself, whether it's write down ideas, write, sketch out projects for the future, because there's so much blessing in the month of Ramadan itself that while it's great to start things early, the blessing you get, your state is going to be different in Ramadan. So you always want to be, like I always like to be at least writing during Ramadan or thinking about film work, or I always want to be creative in the month because it's just a month with so much mercy that that it's for many of us, it's our most creative time of year. It's our most busy time of year. It's the month when we have the most energy, despite the fasting, right? Because Allah puts so much barakah in the month that use your time wisely. And of course, you also want to create space to worship Allah. So we're going to go through these slides. This is where you have to get really clear on who your audience is, right? We've been talking about audience throughout this course, and we use this slide from Dr. Jonathan Wilson to talk about the different levels of it, right? National, local, subcultures, transnational. And so really, if you're doing Muslim content, you should know, are you doing it at a mosque level? Are you doing it at a national level? Right now, of course, everybody is the internet is open. Everyone is not just consuming local content, but consuming national content. It's a really good opportunity for you to get your brand, to build brand awareness before people go back into their localities after this lockdown is over, probably in the next 6 months or so, 3 to 6 months in the United States. The rest of the world, it could vary, right? And again, back to this idea of audience mapping. Really understand who your audience is. If you have a good idea of who that is, then understanding your Muslim audiences going into the month will really help you. And then I talk about in this deck, right, the different Ramadan audiences specifically. So they can be spiritually oriented Muslims looking for a boost, or the reality is there are Ramadan Muslims. There are Muslims who are generally may only practice, they may only pray, they may only fast during Ramadan, they may only go to the masjid during Ramadan. That's a reality, but you still want to reach those people, right? So understanding who and what there are. And then there's people that are just looking for maybe not spiritual content, but looking for content related to food, related to gifts. People, of course, are looking for where they can give their zakat. So that's how LaunchGood has put themselves at the center of Ramadan, because you can give in your charity every day of the month to organizations around the world that you can choose, right? And they're stepping their game up even further for 2021, as I'll show you at the end of the presentation, where they have some exciting things that they're going to be announcing, and they expect it to double or triple what they've done in years past. So the importance of LaunchGood and understanding what their audience is super important as well, right? People are obviously global in terms of global television viewing habits. They, in the Muslim majority world, they have these television series that are one show is released every night during the month, and a lot of people will stay up late and watch those things, right? People, of course, I think that we're really reaching a breaking point with streaming, in my opinion, where people are just tired of sitting at their computers. People are doing it for work. People have been watching lectures online for a really long time now. Of course, it doesn't have the same reality of sitting in front of someone heart to heart. And so a lot of people have grown tired of that. And so I think that this month people are really going to be looking to how do they build, how do they connect virtually during the month, right? How do you build community? And we'll go over a couple of ideas for that towards the end of this presentation. It'll be really interesting to see the role that Clubhouse plays in this Ramadan, even though it still has, it's still limited to iPhones right now, but it has a really fast Muslim growth and big audiences for Muslims growing on that platform. And I imagine people will be breaking fast there, having conversations, reading Quran throughout the month, and that should be really, really interesting. And then finally, of course, you have the Eid and Raya audiences, where it's people who may not even celebrate the month, or they may just be looking to celebrating Eid with their family, or what's called Hari Raya in Southeast Asia. But part of that is that's where the consumer standpoint is really important, is that you're targeting people that are buying Eid gifts ultimately, right? If you're coming at this from that standpoint, where if the two people that might be watching this are either organizations that are going to be trying to raise money during the month, or organizations that are trying to like really push content during the month, or maybe e-commerce platforms that are really trying to push out their products during the month of Ramadan. So I linked to this really great series from the Ramadan 2020 creative playwork with Google, focused on the MENA region, the Middle East and North Africa, right? And I think that there, if you look at Google Trends, and I'm going to look at a bunch of Google Trends here, you see the big spikes, but they're not exactly where you would imagine them without looking at this data. And what's amazing about this, of course, this is big data, so this is super macro data that, like, this level of data can't lie to us. So, and it makes sense once you start diving into it, right? That there's essentially that Ramadan starts, people are looking 2 weeks before, or 3 weeks earlier, and 1 week after, right? And then this, of course, is basically the first, the big spike here is the first week of Ramadan. So this one gets into it even more clearly, right? In the first 2 weeks, people are preparing for Ramadan. Of course, the search is for, when does Ramadan start? Like any smart publication, like I think Vox has an article like that, where they understand that people are searching that term, and that article will get millions of views because it will be ranked really highly because it's such a simple search term, right? When does Ramadan start? And then people will be, this is also a great time for you to begin teasing your content to your audiences, right? And then you go into this first 10 days, right? And the first 10 days is the biggest spike, especially for content that you'll get the entire month. So that's when you want to grab people. If you're not capturing the first 10 days in whether it's a crowdfunding campaign, whether it's a video series, like you're going to miss out, right? Whether it's a fundraiser, if you're not capturing those first 10 days, you may consider not doing it, because that is the biggest digital spike of the month. Because if you think about it, right, a lot of people towards the end of the month, we know that the height of Ramadan spiritually is the last 10 days. But we also know that a lot of people will shut off digitally during those final 10 days, right? They may stop watching television in those days. They may stop watching TV throughout the whole month. In some cases, they may shut off their social media accounts for the final 10 days of the month, or they may try to stay offline altogether, right? That's what the Google data isn't saying here. So the blue notes that I added there are my notes, right? That it's there is a digital drop-off because people are focused on their worship, their ibadah in the final 10 days of Ramadan, rather than, buying things and searching things and looking for new content, right? And then of course the Eid holiday, where you end up with these final couple weeks, you want to continue to remind people of what it was that they could have, seen during the month, but things really drop off in Eid. I'm actually surprised that there's that level of spike even in Eid that's bigger than the 2 weeks prior, but according to the data, there is, right? So this is looking at this data in a closer way, an actual week by week, and this is looking at the global spikes, right? The people searching Ramadan related content, and we'll see what that is in the next slide, I believe. They're looking. So the Google does on Google Trends, they use this numbers 0 to 100 to say how much something is trending. If something is at 100, it means that's the highest level possible for it to be trending. It's like really viral, or everyone's looking for it. It's really trending heavily in that moment, right? So we see there, right, for Ramadan starting last year, the search terms related to Ramadan, it spikes right in that week leading into Ramadan in the very beginning, like in a huge way at the level of 100. Then it goes to 31 week 2, right? Then 20. Then it flattens out there over the weeks 3 and 4, and then as it's ending, it spikes again. And that digital spike right at the end of Ramadan, especially probably the last 2 days after the 27th, where people might be coming back online, has a lot to do with people searching for gifts, right? And people trying to buy Eid gifts or last minute Eid gifts, or shipping things to friends and family, whatever it may be, in those final 2 days, or coming back online maybe, because for a lot of people the 27th is the height of the month, and then things start to taper off after as we head into Eid. This Ramadan ranking by search by country, there's a lot that we can understand from this data as well. It's super fascinating, right? So we're looking at like the highest search. You have Senegal and Qatar, right? Then the UAE, Pakistan, Bahrain, Morocco, Tunisia, and then I bolded the countries that are Muslim minority countries, and so we get France, Ethiopia, Belgium, the Netherlands, Singapore, and the United Kingdom all in the top 25. And then it takes all the way to 45 to get to the United States in terms of, this is search and virality by population, of course, right? So it shows that, but still, these are the top 50 countries in the world in terms of searching for Ramadan content, in terms of the level, scale of the search, right? You have to remember that the United States has more Muslims in the United States, like 10 to 15 million realistically, than some Muslim countries, right? Than some small Muslim countries. So, and the United States spending power and the American Muslim spending power is so big, as we'll see in what the cost is per click, right? It's really fascinating to dive even deeper into this data, because one of the things that people may not know is that the United States doesn't take, in its census, it does not take religious data. And so that's why the numbers of American Muslims, I've always thought the numbers are low. There's these generic numbers that Pew puts out around 2 to 3 million, but realistically, there's 500,000 to 1 million Muslims just in Southern California. There's 1 million Muslims in New York area. There's 1 million Muslims in DC, Virginia area. There's 1 million Muslims in the Chicagoland area, right? So like, if you add those numbers up, it doesn't make sense that it would be 2 to 3 million. Much more realistically, I think, his numbers, especially with the birth rates of our communities, is around 10 to 15 million. But what this data shows about Ramadan in particular is where people are searching. So it shows where the biggest Muslim populations are in the United States, right? And DC, of course, has the large population of Muslims working in politics in the DC metro area. And then New Jersey, Maryland, New York, Virginia, Delaware, Minnesota, Michigan, Connecticut, surprisingly, right? Illinois, Pennsylvania, California, all the way at number 12, Massachusetts, Washington, and Texas. So interesting data related to Ramadan to see if you're in any of those areas, like how big your audience is compared to other areas. And then these are the search terms related to Ramadan, right? That shows that while we'll go into all of this advertising that's done around Ramadan and people trying to target Muslim consumers to get them to buy, and Google in their trend sheets is talking about the way that people target Muslims during the month, and the level that Muslims are searching for things to buy and consume. The reality is the vast majority here, if you see the top 20 related search terms to Ramadan, none of it has to do with buying, right? All of it has to do with forms of ibadah, basically, right? So you have ibadah, fard, sunnah prayer, sunnah, rakat, ummah, the witr prayer. People are searching how to pray the witr prayer, right, at home. The Prophet ﷺ surah, zakat al-fitr, figuring out how much the zakat al-fitr is, the tarawih, how to conduct tarawih at home, especially with people being at home. The zakat, Allah, obviously, right? Muhammad ﷺ, fasting in Islam. And then there was one search term at 21 that was not related. That was someone whose name is Ramadan. So I just removed that. But you see the scale in which these topics, it's also super fascinating to look at how much, this is an example of how much more these terms are, people are trafficking these topics in Ramadan than any other time of year, right? So the Sunnah prayer, 600%. Ibadah, 700% compared to the rest of the year. The witr, 250%, right? The rakat, 400% more. So it's really fascinating to look at things that way, to see how much more they're searched. Even though things like more general things like Islam, 40% more in Ramadan. That's because Muslims are in the press a lot during Ramadan in more positive ways. So maybe that has to do with broader searching, but it's not the same level in which the big spike comes from Muslims themselves, ourselves, not from outside sources. But then this one is really fascinating, right? Let me move my camera over here so that you can see this data. This is the top 20 cost per click that people are paying around the world for Muslim advertising, whether it's a YouTube video or trying to get people to give to a zakat campaign. This is what you'll be paying by a customer, right? With the United States being the third highest CPC in the world to gain what are likely Muslim consumers in the month. Then we get the United States, the UK, Australia, Canada. It goes to Europe again with Switzerland, the UAE, Germany, New Zealand, Ireland, Qatar, Norway, Austria, Belgium, the Netherlands, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, and Turkey. So, and we see how drastic, how big of a difference there is in CPC between the United States and Turkey, for instance, right? You're paying $1.50 more for customer acquisition per click. And realistically, whether or not that you acquire that customer is up to what your website looks like and whether or not people have decided to purchase it, right? But it just shows how much more expensive it is to get a consumer in the U.S., but also why it's that because it's also worth money in terms of purchasing power, right? And so then here, I'll move this back up here to the corner, right? Or is you're looking at the 4 phases of Ramadan according to Google, right? You have these pre-Ramadan, the 2-week preparation phase, but I wanted to go through that at the beginning to not just talk about through that other trending data rather than just this report data, because I wanted to show that it very clearly is focused on spiritual content, and that if you create spiritual content, you can make you can get it in front of people in the month, right? But preparation, deeper spirituality, people are doing things like especially searching for decor. I think there's a big opportunity in that space that companies aren't really going after, right? Cooking reviews and the importance of reviews, the fashion statements, and thinking about making a fashion statement. Of course, this mattered more pre-COVID than it matters in the last Ramadan and what is likely to be another Ramadan largely at home for most of us around the world. The first 2 weeks, spirituality peaks. People are looking at modest beauty, themed recipe, sweets, and even men are searching as well, right? The final 2 weeks of Ramadan, beauty gets festive, grooming for men, restaurant fare, people looking for the right gifts, entertainment really peaks in the last 10 days. That is mostly in Muslim majority world. I don't see the same trend in the United States where people aren't consuming as much content. and people, that's really interesting that people are looking for Umrah and Hajj packages, of course, because they're inspired in this month. So for the Hajj industry and the Umrah industry, people know to be running their advertising that in this time, these last 2 weeks of Ramadan, where it's up to 200% more because people are, in terms of traffic, because people are making their intentions to go on Hajj and Umrah in Ramadan, of course, right? And then there is really a big fad. Even last year, in the midst of lockdown, I still saw people traveling uh, during the Eid holiday, right? And traveling, like taking road trips or whatever it may be. But a lot of Muslims, I would say the majority of Muslims who can take time off from work, take time off from work after Ramadan rather than during Ramadan itself because people are focused on ibadah in the evenings anyway. So most people tend to keep working. Maybe some take time off in the final week of Ramadan, but a lot of people go on vacation. So it's a great time to also advertise for traveling, right? And then the beginning of, unfortunately, for many of us, returning to old habits and also gifting post Eid, right? So now to look at some of these Ramadan advertisements from around the world, right? I think it's super fascinating to show that there's this idea that, oh, why in Europe especially, why would you market to Muslim consumers? Look at every single corporation in the world, almost major corporation, and you will find Ramadan advertising, right? There were some that I looked at, especially some more bigger tech companies like Tesla, as an example, Amazon, right, where I couldn't find. Obviously, people are using Amazon as a search engine and buying ads within Amazon for Ramadan. But as a company, I haven't seen Ramadan ads from them. I didn't see Ramadan ads from Tesla. But here's this McDonald's one where the fries are looking like the dua hands, right? The every form of crescent possible. This one is a Burger King ad, right? A Nivea ad and an Oreo ad. And then this one is a Uber ad, where this is Uber focused on the Middle East. But of course, when they had Southeast Asian marketplace, Uber was running Ramadan ads there as well. It's huge for these food platforms. There's an entire report about the Southeast Asian company that won against Uber, Grab, about Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. There's an entire report that I link to in the course content for this week that you can check out that talks about how big of an opportunity it is for halal restaurants. Obviously, this is for Uniqlo. They're Southeast Asian targeted. It's a Japanese company targeting Southeast Asia. And then things start to get a little bit lazy here, right? This is like, hey, take an existing ad we had that has maybe nothing to do with Ramadan and turn it into a Ramadan ad from the Gap, right? And then we have Huawei, or the Chinese cell phone company that goes in the totally secular direction, although trying to market to Muslim consumers during Ramadan with moonlight moments, hashtag, rather than anything having to do with Ramadan. And that, of course, has to do with the Chinese government having huge stakes in the majority of Chinese tech companies. And then there's just when things go off the rocker, right? This great Ramadan ad from Pringles, and it may not have been Pringles' fault. This is a Tesco in the Middle East. Tesco is like a big grocery store for smoky bacon flavored Pringles. Right. Interesting. So yeah, I wanted to look at a couple of video ads as well. This one, you'll figure out who it's from.
I like to hear the world to sing in perfect harmony. I like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company.
Yeah, so most of us don't break our fast with Coke, so that part was a little bit off at the end where she had the Coke before the dates, but come on, advertising. But really nice ad, obviously multi-million dollar ad from Coke. I don't know what exact markets it played in because it's an English language advertisement. Probably, I imagine the UAE, because UAE, there's a mixture of English language ads and Arabic ads because the so many people, the majority of people, speak English there as well, right? And then this ad, real quick, is a very short ad from Apple. Yeah, so a short ad put out for Ramadan with local creatives, right? Super interesting um, ad. And then let's go back to the slides. So what's missing here, right, is an understanding of Muslim audiences that are really global. But this has to do with how advertising is bought and content are bought and sold by country. That still is true, except for the streamers, right? The streamers are the ones that are breaking down those barriers, like Netflix. Um, but we still don't see content curation for Ramadan onto entities like Netflix, Spotify, Apple Music, which I'm surprised by. Even in the United States, Netflix had an area for Deepavali or Diwali this year, so maybe there'll be a Ramadan content area, but I've not seen it on Netflix in the United States. And there's still this idea that somehow in the United States we wouldn't consume content about Ramadan. But I think that things will reach a point where corporations understand this if those of us who are researchers and thinkers in the space show that the global data is asking for it, right? And that's part of what we're doing and thinking about this. Seeing Ramadan beyond the niche localized audience and as a globally lived reality, right? And then the other part that's missing really is, and that we'll talk about here, is greater community building online for those who don't have local communities that they are part of or feel comfortable in. And then the big question mark for me is will be interesting to see how digital productions continue post COVID, right? Especially at the mosque level. So let's go through. So now I want to go through a bunch of more localized content ideation for Islamic institutions, nonprofits, and mosques, right? So the type of content that does well for media producers who are thinking about putting out content this month is, of course, spiritual content, community oriented productions where you're telling the story of a specific community. All these 30-day series. The classic that came out about 10 years ago was the 30 Mosques in 30 Days series, where first, I think it was Aman Ali did it as a written blog where he Thank you for that series. That was super random. So Aman Ali did it as a series, as a written series, as a blog where he visited different mosques around the country over 30 days. And then they did it with a full film crew. And then they did it with an entire film crew, including Musa Saeed and Omar Mullick, and they had this incredible film crew. Unfortunately, they never put out that film, as far as I know. But that's where Aman Ali, Bassam Tariq, who are now like filmmakers and film producers at a huge scale. Bassam Tariq just had a film with Riz Ahmed this year. I think it's coming out 2021 in the U.S. But right, that's where they got their start, and so now people have replicated it around the world. 30 mosques in 30 days in different parts of the world, different countries. Obviously, that's great for when we're not living in the middle of Corona. So, what are 30 days of content that you can think of based on specific topics? Obviously, Imam Omar Suleiman's series on angels that we'll look at more here is a great example of that, right? And also short form content, like 1 to 2 minute pieces. Like my friend Muhi Khwaja, I just did an interview with him for this fasting 5 minute shorts about Islam and philanthropy, where he interviews different people in the Muslim philanthropy space, people with Muslim organizations around the United States every single day. Obviously, food shows kill in Ramadan. Everyone's thinking about food despite the fasting, and then different TV dramas that happen around the world. And then the types of content that does well at the mosque level, right? Obviously, spiritually oriented content. The majority of masajid do tafsir. The more unique or creative tafsir, the better, in terms of more likely that you get people to view your audience beyond just your local audience. Right? How do you build in and feature local community institutions? You should really, that's why we have this course for Muslim institutions. Is you shouldn't be thinking about your live streams just like I hit the button and I go live. You can think of them like a TV production, especially if you're using more sophisticated platforms like Ecamm, which I'm using now, or even like OBS, where you could put an advertisement from a company that's sponsoring, that night during Ramadan, or the different programs, or you run an advertisement for someone who's fundraising in the mosque that night. Right? Think of it like a TV production, not just a live stream that's point and shoot, and get creative with your work, right? There's if you make your content beautiful, if you really try to get creative with it, you're more likely to get people to engage with your content, because if it's just point and shoot, or the camera angles aren't even right, or you don't make your stage look beautiful. I mean, this is something that, like Zaytuna College as an example, they started this decades ago, where they would really spend a lot of time on like stage production and bringing in flowers and making the stage look beautiful, and then everybody started doing it everywhere, because it's like, yeah, don't just set up a table and then give a lecture from that table. Make it actually decorate your area, make it look beautiful. Think of what your production looks like for the month, right? And then there's also, of course, deep community building. We have like organizations like Rabata, which we'll talk about a bit at the end. I talked a little bit about Clubhouse, but the ability to create community-oriented rooms. People are so tired of the didactic forms of education where it's just one person lecturing. How do you actually have conversations, check-ins? How are people doing? You especially can do this with friends groups, smaller groups related to your institution, maybe donor groups. It's really important. How do you create space for people to reflect on the work that you're putting out in this month, when you're not seeing people in person and you can't get feedback from them in person the way you would normally? It's really, really important to remember how much local news agencies are looking for PR driven content. So if you have a story that you think is really cool for the month, make sure you put out a press release, right? Tell your story locally. Have them, help them think about what you're doing at a local level. Now let's look at the Ramadan Awards from last year before we get into Angels in Your Presence as some great examples, right? So last year we did the Ramadan 2020 Digital Media Awards, because everyone worked so hard during the month to put out all of this really, really incredible content, right? And so we wanted to create something where we could recognize all the amazing content that people were producing around the world, right? So we said best platform overall, LaunchGood, right? They raised $32 million in 2020. They had 250,000 people giving on their platform with 6,500 campaigns created and $8 million given directly to zakat, which is surprising because I would think that it would be more. The majority of people are looking to give money to zakat-oriented campaigns during Ramadan, but this is actually a minority of what was raised in the month. We gave award to these Ramadan heroes for all these people who did really amazing work, focused on Muslim frontliners. This really cool video with this sister from Malaysia who actually she's sewing content. She's sewing things for frontliners. She has
Saya tak menyangka kan yang saya ni dapat jadi viral menjahit baju. Perlukan baju tu sebab dia orang pakai, lepas tu dia orang akan buang lah. Apa saya tak pasal Farah bukan ya, Farah tolong kami. Tahu Farah tolong kami. Pasal hadapan lah.
Really
terima kasih banyak-banyak tahu Farah.
About how she was, creating PPE for frontliners. Then we gave a special award for multimedia reporting on Muslims, this amazing group in Christchurch, New Zealand, who kept reporting on the families after all the media left, who lost families and loved ones, family members and loved ones to the white supremacist massacre that took place in Christchurch, New Zealand. So it's called 1 Year On. Highly, highly recommend you check this out as an example of really focused reporting and coverage of a localized community and an important story after all the media left, right? And they went much deeper. The best local Ramadan television coverage from CBS This Morning, which has a great Muslim producer there. Best Ramadan video series we gave to Angels in Your Presence. Most beautiful Ramadan videos we gave to Al Madina Institute with Sheikh Mokhtar Maghrawi, where we really loved this beautiful B-roll driven content.
Do we fast?
Why we fast? It's almost like meditative.
Because we are ibad of Allah Azza wa Jal.
Beautiful, beautiful content. Best overall content in terms of consistency of production and global content we gave to Cambridge Muslim College. And you can look at, obviously I would look at this page to more in depth because the key to producing like really, really high quality content is consuming high quality content, knowing what's good, seeing what's good, getting inspiration from other people, right? That's what I talk about throughout the course. And Cambridge Muslim College was producing global content, live content generally from around the world. And it was really amazing, the depth of it. Yaqeen Institute for the level of multimedia content across all their digital platforms with their Quran 30 for 30 series that was like an amazing group of thinkers around the world. Dops TV in Malaysia did this Ramadan at Home series that I really, really liked. It was beautiful. Best community building programming obviously goes to Rabata, building amazing content for Muslim women around the world, but creating community, and they have this like digital mosque and really, really incredible work. ICNYU had, even though they were at the epicenter of the pandemic, literally the global pandemic at that point in Ramadan last year was New York City, they still were doing 8 programs a day at ICNYU, led by Imam Sheikh Aisha Prime, Imam Suhaib Webb, and Imam Khalid Latif. So, mashallah. Swiss really creating excellent Ramadan programming where people could join and reading Quran together. Amazing. We did digital reporting awards for all this focus on Muslim doctors and frontliners from HuffPost. Best mosque content, Cambridge Central Mosque did an entire 24-hour TV station that they called Ramadan TV that was only on for the month of Ramadan. Really, really amazing to have that level of programming. The Muslim Center of Princeton with Sheikh Mendez, beautiful series. Islah LA, beautiful local content from Mariam Islamic Center in Houston. Best Night of Power broadcast, definitely Isla LA with this, global group of artists. Definitely unique, different. What's your Night of Power content for one audience may not be the same for different audiences, right? So obviously, this was targeting more arts-oriented folk and African-American oriented audiences, but was really, really unique in what they created. Best content about the Prophet ﷺ we gave to Celebrate Mercy, who does amazing content all year round. Best live programming, just look how crispy and beautiful this content is from Zaytuna.
So even though he's
and
exiled, he sees it actually that he's got an opportunity.
Yusuf. Best children's programming we gave to Noor Kids for doing a program every day. My kids watched some of that. Best young adult programming, Benny had a really amazing series. Best women's focused programming, again, Rabata. Mariam Amir did this woman's Quran recitation program every day that was really, really beautiful with different female Quran reciters. Best diverse unified Eid programming is this Sunni Shia program in the Bay Area that happens every year. They were able to bring that, or they always have been working together. They're able to bring a really amazing and unique program together online because of COVID. Right, best Spanish language content during Ramadan, Imam Wesley LeBron and Islam in Spanish. Best du'as, right? Like, think about the level of diversity in these campaigns we were looking at here. This is Imam Khalil Latif's dua that he did for us in our border mosque program that then got turned into he ended up going on CNN to recite this prayer on CNN in the middle of Ramadan, in the midst of the height of the COVID crisis in New York City. Best social justice program, Believers Bailout had what I believe it was a really long program. I think it was like 8 hours long. Really, really beautiful. Best Instagram short video series from Wasat, the Language of Light program.
In a recent reminder, we discussed the name Ar-Rahman when we mentioned Surah Rahman in discussing Kist and equity, and I'd like this last reminder to be focused on that name, Ar-Rahman.
So they just took a different Arabic word every day and broke it down spiritually. Really beautiful concept, and they were like 3 minutes each, right? So short form content. They're able to produce it online in the month, virtually, and they made something really beautiful. Best Instagram live programs, jokes and gems. Best diverse Ramadan programming we gave to Omar Ramadan, which was a coalition of mosques who came together to create really beautiful programming. Best crowdfunding videos we gave to the Bissau project, this amazing project focused on Guinea-Bissau and the Roda Masjid and the Dar al-Rahma based in Detroit. Then Best Muslim Nonprofit Sector Focus Series we gave to American Muslim Community Foundation. Best Mental Health Spiritual Wellness Series, again to DOPS TV. And yeah, Majlis, it goes on, right? We did a lot of awards to show the level of programming in the month. And so I highly recommend you check these out. And then at the end, we did these Ramadan Eid commercials, like this one from Malaysia that's really, really amazing, is actually a animated piece.
Malam bulan di pagar bintang.
Really, really good. So it's all about the type of talent you have around your organization. And, hopefully with our Ramadan awards and some of the other links that we sent you, you can really ideate and think of some cool concepts for your Ramadan programming, right? And then finally, we look at Angels in Your Presence, right? Which is Imam Omar Suleiman's really incredible series about angels, about where he's doing this series about the 6 pillars of faith. The first year he did the love of Allah, which is about the belief in Allah. The second year, the belief in the angels. And so he did this series about angels in your presence. And it's really beautiful about how he conceptualized it. He wrote it as a video series. They turned it into, he worked with a group of filmmakers to script it out and to turn it into these really, really powerful films that was, produced in the midst of COVID, produced quickly, but produced at a really, really high quality level. And so a lot of people within this course, we've talked about this series, and they said, oh yeah, but that's Yaqeen Institute, right? But this is really still low budget filmmaking that's really high quality content, and it just shows the level of creativity. Yeah, it probably took a pretty major investment to get that film crew to make it, like $20,000 to $30,000 maybe, but it can be made cheaper than that if you have the right film teams globally, or you just have younger, hungry filmmakers, right? But this is stuff that's possible at your institutions, or maybe you do a couple of these rather than doing 30 days, right? But it's powerful because of the way it's scripted. His Imam Omar Suleiman's willingness to work on it at a script level, the editing and powerful B-roll imagery they found related to what he was saying, and bringing that in. I'm sure we'll see a ton of copycats of this in Ramadan 2021. How they distributed it across all the social media channels, and then with all their other content as well. They were using it for fundraising on Facebook. Really, really amazing across the board. I'll let Imam Omar talk about it himself, about why it was successful, but I think it's really unique to hear from someone like Imam Omar Suleiman talking about why they're successful in producing this piece of content, why it took off in such a big way, and his humbleness to show that he's working with a team here. People always think of, oh, it's him that's doing this content. No, they have a really big team and a really talented team at Yaqeen. This is Imam Omar Suleiman accepting the award for Best Video Series and Best Overall Content for Yaqeen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. This is your brother Omar Suleiman. I am pleased to be here on behalf of the Yaqeen Institute for Islamic Research to accept on behalf of the entire team the award for Best Overall Content and the award for the Best Ramadan Series from the Center for Global Muslim Life. We are a team, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, of multiple creatives, multiple screenwriters. There was so much that went into what took place this Ramadan. And I want to actually just speak to the way that this all came about. The Angel series was something that I actually had started to work on from the Ramadan prior. I thought, what better way to build from Allah loves than to talk about the second pillar of faith, being the malaika, being the angels, but speak about the second pillar of faith in a way that would speak to the practical element of engaging that pillar of faith, which was to not just speak about the angels as some, phenomenon that exists in the background, but to speak about them and to engage the malaika in a way that we would then bring about practical actions in our lives that would bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who sends the angels when there are deeds that are being done that are pleasing to him. And, as the COVID era came to be, we actually recorded that series, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, the week after the shutdown. And we recorded it over a period of 2 days, but then all of the treatment that went into it, the graphics, everything from the filming to the graphics. And so I want to accept that award on behalf of the team, the creative team, our incredible crew that filmed and that worked the graphics into it, the animations, everything that was done with that team, the marketing team, alhamdulillah, which then made sure that it reached places where Islamic content might not have reached before. The Quran 30 for 30 was something that came about just a couple of weeks before Ramadan, where we thought to ourselves, you know what, this is an opportunity for.
Yeah, so that's Imam Omar reflecting on why that series was why people loved it, right? Is that he was working with a team on it and they were able to produce something really, really powerful. And I think that's, how all of our institutions should approach this. If you want something of that quality, you need to work with creatives on these projects, right? You need to figure out budgets to work with creatives to really take your branding to the next level. Finally, the last couple of slides, right, and really important slides, community building. I love what Rabata is doing with focused on Muslim women scholarship. They've built a virtual community around the world focused on Islamic learning of just women, right? And they have this open mosque, group study time, and the iftars together, all these female-only spaces that they've created using Zoom. They have courses, of course, but they like really are going deep in the month, right? Because we need to build community virtually, we have to be able to speak to each other and just be like the same as you would have a Q&A at your mosque for an event. Why aren't we opening up any of our spaces to have the community participate, right? And we should think about that in the month, right? Like even if you're having Taraweeh, maybe like at the end of Taraweeh, like open it up and allow people to say salam to each other, right? How do you build community when you're just online? And in the U.S., this Ramadan will be more mixed, where there'll be some institutions that will have people in person, inshallah, but they still won't have them. They'll still have a lot of people that are online as well. But how do we really build community in deeper ways, right? A great example of that is breakout groups that you can create using Zoom. A lot of our institutions use Zoom, but they don't, how do you do guided discussions within community to really help people, remind people of the communities that they're a part of, that we've been apart from for so long now, right? And then finally, some of the most important content of this deck, right, is fundraising during the month. How do you, right, this is best if it's driven by a team. A board, a fundraising committee, a project committee. If you have an organization, how do you build a team around your fundraising project? That's what you should be thinking about, part one, right? That should be the team within the organization and a team outside of the organization who are going to connect you to funders and help you think about your fundraising, right? It's best if it's for a specific project and not just for organizational funds, right? Because people really want to support specific things. They don't want to just support your institution. So it's always best to say, this is for this project and we really need your support on it. And then the majority of Ramadan fundraising goes to zakat eligible projects. But the problem I see in the Muslim community is that some institutions in countries where there aren't bodies that regulate this stuff will make up their own rules related to zakat, which is obviously super, super problematic and super dangerous. It's something that it's a conversation our community needs to have, but don't make up your own zakat rules to get access to money. Like, be creative in serving the people who actually need zakat funds if you want to raise zakat money. And ourselves, I'm not even that comfortable raising zakat money at an institutional level, because zakat really is for the poor directly. And so you need to make sure that money is getting to, as the definition says, the miskin. You want to build your fundraising list early. Really do your one-to-ones with your donors before Ramadan, if possible. Tell them about what you're building. Don't expect to just call people up in the middle of Ramadan, as busy as everybody is during the month, and raise a bunch of money, right? The number is that it can take between 8 to 15 asks to convert a donor. So ask everywhere that it's possible, right? Ask via email. A lot, right? If it's just going into people's junk mail, that is a huge problem. It might be going to secondary advertising folders, like especially people who use Gmail. But, that's why you have to get creative with your titling. Maybe don't use images or designed emails. Use text-only emails. There's these mass mailer programs that you can get that deliver to individuals, right? So that hopefully it's delivered on the front page. But a lot of that has to also do with, the title that you're putting on your emails. Make it seem like you're talking to a friend rather than talking to an individual. And we go through this stuff, of course, in the Digital Media Academy course in depth. Creative mailers, right? We shouldn't underestimate the power of a piece of mail, where a lot of old school organizations like CARE, Islamic Relief, all the relief organizations use mailers to raise money in Ramadan if you have people's addresses. And it works, right? It really, really works. In some cases, the majority of fundraising that's done during a month for some of these older school organizations is through mailers. I know it's not obviously great for the environment, and a lot of people will throw them away, but it's something to consider, right? You want to get text groups, WhatsApp groups, reach out to people, especially in the last days of Ramadan. Utilize all the social media platforms. If you have a LaunchGood, you can also have a fundraiser on Facebook, or you're putting that money you're raising on Facebook into your LaunchGood as offline donations. Raise money everywhere, right? You can raise money now on YouTube, but only if you have 10,000 plus subscribers to your channel. YouTube ads are a really great way to get in front of, to get eyeballs in front of people about your organization, even if it's 4 or 5 seconds. Those ads can convert because people have to stare at your ad to press skip. And so they really are highly effective, as well as Instagram, TikTok, all of the newer platforms. Advertising is a great way, paid advertising is a really great way to get in front of people. And then LaunchGood now is, of course, at the center of Ramadan, and other platforms to consider. And I'm going to talk about that here in these last 2 slides. And other platforms to consider are Feeling Blessed, My 10 Nights, and Zakatify, which there are LaunchGood competitors emerging, and people that are doing other unique things during Ramadan or doing localized things to different parts of the world. But you can't discount the scale LaunchGood is at, right? This Ramadan, this is from their deck for people who are trying to use their advertising platform this month. They're expecting to raise $75 million. They have all these new features that are coming, including 0% fees as a donor platform that everybody should look into doing a LaunchGood. Like everyone asks, do you have a LaunchGood I can give to, right? Rather than even just giving on your own website. If you have a big enough brand to drive people to your donations site on your own website and you're getting 0% from that platform, then great, right? LaunchGood now also taking 0%, no platform fees. So why not have a LaunchGood also, right? Expecting 415,000 donors. And if you look at their projections last year, right, their actuals were way above their projections. This is they're delivering so much new product features for this Ramadan that it might be possible that they reach this scale, and that they almost 2.5 times X what they did last year. So highly recommended that everybody gets on LaunchGood for 2021 Ramadan. They didn't sponsor this project. They've worked with me on raising money for the Digital Media Academy, but right, even their traffic, right? If you just think about putting a LaunchGood up any other time of year, I look at their traffic regularly, and their traffic ranges between 150,000 to up to 500,000 visitors per month. And then look at last year, 2.5 million site visits, right? So that's up to 6 times what they do regularly. And then if they do 9.4 million, that would be up to more than 20 times the site traffic they have regularly, meaning just being on their platform is really important during the month, right? And then if you look at their audience, that's the other piece that's really important. If you look at who their donors are, right, it's this big, important donor group between 18 and 54. The majority of donors in our community, high education, high net income. It's really the audience that you want to be going after in the month of Ramadan. And so again, highly recommended that you use LaunchGood as part of the month. LaunchGood has become synonymous with Ramadan, and their data is really helping to show that Ramadan is the most important time of giving for the Muslim community. I believe there's a story to tell about how Ramadan is the biggest month of giving by any community in the world. Inshallah, we can begin to prove that. May Allah bless you in your efforts this Ramadan, and always may Allah bless you in your work. And thank you for being a part of this Digital Media Academy. We've had a really amazing group since we launched the course to now. We've had a really amazing group of students who've presented their work. We've had 8 different groups present now, mashallah, really incredible, from around the world. content and projects, and may Allah accept from us in our intentions in helping to be with this course to plant seeds around the world of people who can be inspired by this course and the content that we feature in it. And may Allah allow you to exceed what we've done with our digital media production work, and may Allah allow you to capture the blessings of the month of Ramadan and wherever it is that you may be watching this. Jazakallah khairan for all your love and support. Assalamu alaikum.